Wake up, America, and smell and taste the awesomeness of that delicious pork roll stuffed with sauerkraut and sweet and sour red cabbage, studded with sage, caramelized onions and thyme, a little bit of garlic. This, my friends, is what you want to make for dinner, don't you? Subscribe to Spilled Milk. We'll show you how to make this. Next thing that you want to do, you want to mince a couple of onions. And in my original recipe, I always added these raw. But over the years, since I've been playing around with this, I've found that sauteing the onions and adding all of my seasonings there before I add it to the ground raw pork actually is a much more flavorful and elegant way to do this, and the result is infinitely nicer. And you get that wonderful caramelized onion flavor in your pork. And I don't need to be very precise about this dice because it's going to caramelize. So just a rough chop. We just don't want very big pieces because we're going to be slicing through this elegant bacon wrapped meatloaf. And I like a lot of caramelized onion in this. Some oil in a hot pan. Add your onion. And then season them well with salt. Draws out the moisture, helps them caramelize a little more nicely. And I like to season every single element that goes into this dish. And once you see this mixture get nice and caramelized and toasty, we start to add our other seasonings. First thing I want to add is I have a little bit of minced chili from my garden. You can use dried chili, fresh chili, whatever you want, or no chili at all. Just gives it a mild warmth. And 3 cloves of minced garlic. And we add that at this point because we don't want the garlic or the chili to scorch or burn. Then I add some thyme and some sage. I like nice dried sage. This is also from my garden. You can buy conventional ground chopped sage. This is dried. It's really, really aromatic. I don't like to use powdered sage, but you can if you want. Just don't, and you can use fresh sage too. Just make sure that you cook it well. So I add the thyme and the sage. And we're just warming that up in the juices from the onions, and it just gets aromatic almost right away. I just turn off the heat and let that cool. And this is the fun part. Once we mix our force meat together, we're gonna stuff it with our fermented mixtures. The first one is this sauerkraut here. I have about 2.5, 3 cups of sauerkraut that I've squeezed dry. I don't want a lot of sauerkraut juice in there. And then this is 2 cups of sweet and sour pickled red cabbage. And I'm gonna lay them in separately so we get a really nice colorful effect in there. But that blending of the cured and the pickled is going to give just an insane piquancy to this pork. It's gonna cut through the richness of the meat itself as well as that bacon. It just makes an ideal stuffing for this delicious meat roll. And you want to season it with salt. And then we're ready to get into the fun part. So I just put my meat mixture, making sure to get everything out of the work bowl. and I put it here on my piece of butcher paper. You could use saran wrap. You can use whatever you like. And you want it to be, I don't know, about 1 inch thick and about the size of a brownie pan. So I guess this is about 12 by 9, something like that. Super, super simple. Next thing that I want to do is I want to lay my sauerkraut in a somewhat even cylinder down the middle of this. And I want to leave about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch at the ends there. Anything left over you can serve with your slices. And then I'm going to take my red cabbage and I'm going to do almost the exact same thing. I'm just going to lay it next to it, squeezing out any extra liquid that I didn't quite get to squeeze out the last time when I put it in that bowl, so that I have these 2 strips of stuffing right there. Now, a little tip on rolling. I probably have about 2.5 inches there, and I've probably got about 3.5 inches there in the area towards me. And the reason is, what I want to do is I want to flip all of this meat over the top. And before I close it, I want to pull it back to show you that my pork mixture here is almost touching the other side, right? I need this strip of meat right here on the bottom to complete the seal, so I actually have an even cylinder. And then I roll it out like this with my fingers. I'm not extending it, I'm just kind of sealing it. And then I seal the ends. And then when I peel this back and roll it back towards me, I can make sure that my seal is just perfect. And I tuck in those ends. Remember, I told you about how we're gonna button up our ends there. And the area where the meat is joined is now right here on the top. And then put that to the side, place a lasagna pan or baking tray there, right? It's gonna fit right in there. And you can just slide that in. And I like to push this away from the edge just enough so that you can sort of breathe on the ends there. And I have this beautiful pork loaf, but it's not done yet. And now here's the fun part, or what I think is the fun part, and what really sets this apart from similar roasts is starting at this very end. We're gonna put our bacon strip over strip, letting them overlap, I don't know, 1/2 inch. And we are going to shingle our bacon on the top of this. See how I overlap it here and tuck those ends in? And you just keep repeating all the way down. And it is going to caramelize, baste this pork. Not that it really needs any more fat, but it helps. Every little bit helps. But more importantly, we put this bacon crust around the outside of it so that when we carve it, even a simple roast that's essentially just a meatloaf actually looks really, really, really elegant. So I think I'm gonna stick an extra piece on each end to make sure it's really, really covered there at the end. And I'm gonna do the same thing down here, just to make sure I am totally covered. How does that look? Pretty darn good, huh? Now, if you wanna get really fancy and it's your thing, it's not really mine because I don't want to make this too sweet. I'd rather put a sweet condiment with it. But I do know some people who've sent me pictures who've made this recipe of mine and they put brown sugar over the top, which, look, I'm not gonna lie, if that's your thing, go ahead and do it. I endorse it, but I go into the oven plain with this. You could do 350, I think is a safer temperature for about an hour, hour and 15 minutes. You can go at 375. The problem is at 375, you risk burning your bacon before it's cooked all the way through. I like going at 350. And then if I need to, I can just turn on the broiler for 45 seconds to crisp the top, or I can just raise the temperature in the oven and crisp the top. It's super, super, super responsive because at that point, all the liquidized fat is out of the bacon, but typically I don't have to. Anyway, into the oven this goes. This beautiful roast goes into my oven. Now, I have set my oven to 375 because when I open the door, I'm gonna lose some heat. I wanna start cooking right away. I'll lower it to 350. Once it goes in there, open the door, in goes the roast, turn it down to 350 and let that cook. After an hour and 10 minutes at 350 degrees, there is your pork roll with sauerkraut and sweet and sour cabbage. Boy, is that stunning. I tip away the liquid, then I'm gonna plate it on this platter over here, and we'll see how it turned out. So I skimmed the juices and I'm hanging on to those beautiful brown pan drippings, completely devoid of fat, just wonderful caramelized pork juices with all of those gorgeous elements from the onions. It reeks of the herbs that we put inside of there. Our meat has rested for a little bit. And let me show you what this looks like on the inside. I always try to do this with a serrated knife. Make a few cuts. And this is what we have. Tell me that doesn't look awesome. Little parsley, a little bit of that incredible jus. You can serve this with roast potatoes, potato salad, spätzle, whatever you like. Just make sure to grab a fork and a knife and enjoy. And with a little dab of mustard, there is literally nothing better. What a homey, delicious, easy, fast, simple, inexpensive recipe that'll feed 5-6 people easy. Although I like to serve it for 4, make sure I have leftovers for the next day because you know I like it on a sandwich. You're gonna wanna make this recipe. I know you're gonna love it. Make sure you do. Let me know what you think of it. It's one of my family favorites. I hope it becomes one of yours.